Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our show. We have a very, very special friend and a guest today. I have been not doing a couple of weeks shows because it has been summer break and it's been busy. But as usual, I want to share important stories of this very special person I have here. You're gonna have to help me with your name. I told you I'm gonna forget it.
I love it. Louisa Jovanovich.
Rich. Yes, perfectly said. Thank you so much for being here. And as you and I, you have your own podcast where we don't go through the list of things that we have accomplished. We get to talk about all the stuff you've done so far. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you were even 5 years ago, because that'll tell us how you have changed.
Thank you so much, Kohila, for having me on this show because you know what I love about how much I've changed is I am around spectacular human beings like you. And this is my network of beautiful humans impacting the world. And we were earlier talking about the stories that we make up about our life. So 5 years ago, I actually was getting divorced. And right before my divorce, I had some beautiful, amazing stories that weren't very empowering about my life, but boy, were they eloquent. And I was so great at telling them. And I had a beautiful life. Had moved from California to Florida, and I was living in a golf course community. And I had always said, I wanted to live in a home where the gates open up and I get to go into my gated community, into my beautiful home. And I had how life was supposed to look. And being as powerful as I am and quite the manifester, I actually had that happen. So when I was younger, I wanted to live in Florida and my parents wouldn't let me. I was 18 years old. I went to go visit a friend and they were like, "You are not going to Florida." Because I came back and I loved the weather. I loved Florida. I was like, "I'm moving." So they did not let me do that. Well, lo and behold, years later, I'm married. I have children. I no longer want to move to Florida. But guess what happens? My ex-husband's job moves us to Florida. So I had said I wanted it. Here I am. I'm in Florida. And then I also had a story that I wanted to get married, buy a house, have children. It was supposed to look a certain way.
Mm.
I did that. I got married, I had children, and I bought the house and I did all of the things I said I was going to do. And I kept walking around feeling sad for myself. Like it was really sad. I believed I was so sad. And now I make fun of it a little bit. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. Because at the time I was so sad and I believed my sadness so much that when I cried, I would take pictures of my eyes so I could remember how sad I was.
Mm.
And I was so bought into that story. So fast forward, I get divorced and I realize I've got to do something different. I had taken Landmark Forum when I was in my 20s. It really worked. I knew transformational courses work. So I registered for one. And I walked in with my tail between my legs. I was so devastated of how was I going to rebuild my life. I had given up a lot of myself in this relationship,
Mm.
but I knew that there was a way out. So I take the course and I went in because I really was like committed. There's something wrong with me. Once I find what's wrong with me, I get to fix it and then I get to do what's right. That's why I went in there. What I discovered was there was nothing wrong with me. There
Mm.
was nothing wrong with me. I found all the things that were right with me. And I realized how like awesome I am.
Mm.
And not in a show-offy way. Like I really saw all of the beautiful things that made me me and how I show up in the world and when I'm so loving and passionate and really care about the world, how other people light up and how it brings joy into the world we live in.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
beautiful.
that's a tiny little, very
Part.
long answer to a very simple question.
No, no, that's beautiful. But I want to touch on something you told me a couple of days ago that you were a hairdresser. We want to touch on that and how you connected coaching to hairdressing. That was
Yeah,
beautiful. How you have connected those, and now you're a coach. So
yeah.
tell us a little bit about why that connection was made for you and how you got to connect those two pieces, because nobody thinks coaching and hairdressing goes together, right?
Well, I used to doing hair. Everybody would call me and say, "You're my guru. Can you help me with this? And can you help me with that?" I didn't know better. Of course, I was their guru. It's I listened to them and I could see them, and that's why I love Zoom so much because it's literally like doing hair. I could see people in the mirror.
Hmm.
And that's what my experience of doing hair is like also. So I'm doing hair and I'm looking at people's faces and their body language while they're speaking. And it's not
Hmm.
always what's coming out of their mouth. It is their experience. I'm touching and experiencing them while I'm doing their hair. And I've heard that the way that they feel seen and heard by me is such a huge impact by the time they leave. And what I started to notice, because yesterday we were talking about common denominators in math. I have always grown up saying I do not like math, but I've always looked for common denominators. And everybody kept leaving me messages saying, every time I leave your chair, you give me a nugget that I get to
Hmm.
take with me and take action on. And I just assumed everybody was like that. I really didn't know how I was behaving and being behind the chair was any different than anyone else. And all I knew was I I'm 100% committed to not just creating beautiful hair that makes us feel good,
Yes.
but also leaving with something that's empowering and exciting to take action on that they may not have seen before that appointment.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. It's great. So now, fast forward to now, you are a coach. Tell us a little bit about what you do now.
So I got certified to teach an 8-week course. And the reason I became a coach was because of this course.
Hmm.
And it is started in Stanford University 40 years ago when people were doing all the what they're supposed to do. And they came back to and said, I'm not happy. It's not what I wanted. It did not fulfill me having done all of the schooling. I'm not living my joyful life. So Dr. Michael Ray created this course and it's on mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And so I'm very insightful and I understand things. I'm very clear on who I like, how to do what I like. I've never ever been able to do something I don't like to do. It's a little bit
Hmm.
bratty of me, but I don't do what I don't want to do. So I knew I loved doing hair, but I also knew I was living in Florida and I was flying back to LA every month to do my clients. And what I needed was some time freedom, money freedom, and location freedom. Those were like the three things I did need. And because I intended to travel and I intended to raise my children and I intended to love what I do. So between all of those, what was I going to find that could work in every one of those areas? And the course took me through a process of, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? So it taps into your creativity and you use your creativity to find what you love doing.
Hmm.
So I wasn't attached to anything. All I knew is I had what I was committed to. I knew what I love. I love people. I love talking. I love connecting. So I took all the things that I love and I was like, what do I want to do with it? By the time I was done with the course, I discovered I wanted to be a coach. And not only did I want to be a coach, here's what worked for me. Well, when I did Landmark in my 20s, it worked. What didn't work is I left. I left the world of transformation.
Hmm.
So if I chose to be a coach and I chose to live this curriculum, I wasn't leaving the work.
Hmm.
I get to do what I love. I get to create an impact. I get to do it online. I get to still be a mom. I get to have all of my checklists of what I needed, and it works.
Absolutely.
So I get to live the work and I get to really share it. And that's the thing. It has to be a win-win. And when there's a win-win, it really works.
Yeah. And it's no longer work.
Yes. I've
It's,
never felt like I've had a job.
yeah.
When I say to people I've never had a job, they look at me like I'm a little crazy. And one of the things that if anyone knows me, they've heard me say this at least a million times. I live on vacation.
Hmm.
I literally live on vacation. Everything you would do on vacation, I do every day.
It's awesome. You're living in the perfect place for that too.
Mhm.
Set,
Exactly.
yeah, perfect weather, except sometimes, I guess. So I have a question for you because this show is about, it's for parents to share, a fear that you had and you had overcome. So during all your life, was there one thing that stands out for you, like was holding you back, a fear?
Speaking on stages, speaking publicly, speaking. I loved speaking one on one. Standing behind the chair was safe. I could give you the world behind the chair. Put me in on a stage, put me in front of people. I'm like, oh my God, how do I do that? So I had this ultimate fear of I cannot use my voice and my words and my beingness stand on a stage.
Mm,
That was a whole story that felt 100% real.
mm,
And the very first time I shared with someone outside of the stage, and he said, I invite you to go and share this in the classroom. And so I did. I went and grabbed the microphone. And I was traumatized. I was so scared of like what it was going to be like, but I grabbed the microphone and I shared. And no one else had a standing ovation during that weekend, and everyone stood up and clapped.
mm,
And I ran and sat in my seat really fast, and I was so scared. I literally went from this is great to just like, oh my God, what did I just do? But it felt good. It
mm,
felt really good. And then I also got to co-author. I tell this story too. When I was pregnant with my son, they told me that my blood type was an A positive. And so I said, oh my God, that's awesome. It's the first A plus of my life. Because I had a story that I wasn't smart enough. And
yes.
so I would joke about not being smart enough. And I was like, yeah, that was the first A plus of my life. So now my A plus is my blood type. I have co-written 11 books, bestsellers.
You
For
have.
I have. I
Wow.
and it is from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. There's 13 principles from Think and Grow Rich. So we decided to co-author on each principle. And I thought, well, that sounds fun. I get to, oh, my gardeners are going to make some noise. I get to co-author with 33 extraordinary authors and write on these books. And is it possible to pause it and then let me go close all the doors and windows?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Give me one. So I've had the incredible privilege of being asked to co-author in 13 books based on the principles of Think and Grow Rich. And I thought, you know what? If they're asking me, they must think I'm good enough, and I must have some value in order to bring to this book. And I've always wanted to study the book. I've always wanted to learn. I mean, it's a historical book. It's extraordinary. So I thought, well, if I do this, I get to live the book. So I
Mm,
chose to say yes to it and let go of any, am I good enough? Can I do this? What is it going to look like? I truly didn't care because
mm,
all I cared about was I got to grow as a human being participating in this. So the first chapter I wrote, I was like, oh, that was a little challenging. That was really interesting to write this chapter. And then I
mm,
wrote another one and I actually enjoyed that. By the time I got to the 13th, I really enjoyed the process and I grew as a person. So I realized it's okay. It's absolutely okay if I wasn't perfect on the first book. And I'm
mm,
still just as proud of it. So I've taken on choosing to write. I've taken on choosing to speak on stages. I've started my own podcast. And this is all the girl who was terrified of speaking on stages. But when I was a little girl, fitness has always been a huge part of my life. Fitness has been literally the number one game changer of my life. And when the aerobics instructor would teach at the front of the class, I always wanted to be her. The
mm,
way that her voice would carry her, him, whoever, would carry in the classroom and inspire, I could feel it in my bones. I wanted so badly to be the one that got to have that, to create that for others. So my entire life has been wishing that I get to have a few things: self expression, because I thought how beautiful to physically show up, to use your voice, and to impact another person.
Yeah.
And it's all I wanted to grow up to be.
Mm.
And
So
that's
are
why,
you an instructor too? Are you now an
well,
instructor? Not
it
yet?
wasn't really, it was never about actually being the instructor. It was about having impact. It was about being self expressed. It was about, and I actually thought, how interesting if I was doing that. Let's say I was an aerobics instructor, a yoga instructor, right? I thought that it would have me show up in an arena like this, and it would be easier for me to share because I would be used to using my voice.
Yes.
So that actually isn't true, because I met an aerobics instructor who said, I'm not comfortable speaking on stages. I'm too scared. I'm like, but you do it every day at work. I
Yes.
hear you inspire everybody and use your voice and really channel this beautiful thing that comes through classroom. How are you telling me you're not capable? Because I thought
Mhm.
if I just was an aerobics instructor, that would give me what I need behind, on a stage. Apparently not.
Absolutely. It doesn't transfer for some people. Huh?
Yeah.
There's a block. Like I can do it here, but not there.
Exactly. And I realized those blocks are what holds us back, because I, how many times do I meet the smartest people ever? I mean, they're so smart and they're not moving forward because they keep thinking they need to learn more in order to impact the world. They're constantly wanting to learn the next thing, and then they're going to be ready to make a difference.
Exactly.
And they're so smart, and I'm thinking there are people who have no idea. Like, I love when people say to me, how do you get these incredible speakers to be on your stage? The secret is I didn't know I couldn't. I had no idea I couldn't. I just asked them, and
Yes.
they said yes. So I thought, well, if they said yes, they clearly trust me in order to highlight them in the beautiful way I see them, which is why I asked them.
Yes.
So of course.
Ask. Yeah. The only answer is no, yes, or maybe, right?
Right.
So that's another fear for a lot of people, right? Getting that no. It's
Yeah.
a lot of deeper feelings show up for us. So how did you overcome that? You said, okay, yeah, you were able to start speaking on stages. Like, was there a moment that you remember shifting those stories or whatever you told yourself?
I I just had to, like, sometimes say yes even if I was scared.
Yeah,
I do work every day. So these many things that I do every day do help me get closer and closer to that being less and less traumatizing, because that's the experience I thought I was going to have. I thought I was going to be traumatized. So the first time I went on the stage, outside of the one that I shared where everyone clapped, but it was like after I had written the books, there was this huge interview. I Before I got on stage, I'm like, oh my god, whoa, what am I going to say up there? How is this going to go? I am scared. That's the internal conversation I'm having. And then I got up there and there was so much commotion. There was the person putting the microphone on me. There was all this clapping and talking. And then he was prepping and we were having a conversation. And then it started and then it went really well. It was a ton of fun. And I got off stage. We took pictures. A week later, I'm cleaning my house and I was thinking about the event. And I thought, I forgot to be scared. I totally forgot to be scared because there was so much fun going on that I wasn't scared. I had prepared myself to be scared because I thought I had told myself I'm a girl who gets scared, but I wasn't.
so so when you look at what's in front of you, instead of listening to the story we create, we talked about that, stories we create, right? We're so good at it. So when you just be present, is what you're saying, be
Yeah,
present in that moment of what's happening and learn to enjoy what's just happening there, it takes away those limiting stories or blocks.
absolutely. And here's the thing. You know what I love? When I go back and I watch videos of truly amazing people right now when they were beginning.
Yes. They're
They're not
never
any
seen.
different than me. They truly kind of sucked a little bit too.
Yeah.
And it's okay because guess what? Years later, when we get to be on those extraordinary stages, to share where it started is part of the journey.
Yeah.
Someone else gets to say, "Wow, you did not look really comfortable. You actually look scared," and it's okay.
Yeah. I always compare to trying out a new sport, right? When you're, trying to ski, the first time I got on a ski, I was just like, I wasn't gonna move. And when my partner said move, I'm like, no, 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 not happening. Don't touch me. I will move on my own, but don't touch me. But the next day is not like that. You're ready to move a little, and you're also okay with falling a couple of
Right.
times because you don't feel as it's gonna be that scary. And then you can go a little bit further. So I think every big speaker right now, motivational, any type of speaker, they had to start somewhere, right? And practice makes it perfect. So you can't be perfect right away. That's what I tell myself, my shows are never perfect, but we're learning and growing every day, right?
We are, and it's we're the toughest critic of ourselves because I could look at your show and say, "Wow, she's just amazing." I'm never looking to pick at something that wasn't said perfectly. I just experience you.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking at mine, I am critiquing it. I am listening for like where it screwed up and how I did, and the only way to get over it is because I have such a huge vision of who I get to be in this world and the impact I get to make. It's the only way I get over as I'm picking on myself. And I still do. I really still do. I listen to it, I go, yeah, it's not what I should have said there. Or maybe I'm not quite in love with how that showed up, or I appeared possibly to me insecure.
Vulnerable.
And it's okay.
Yeah. And that's the time you connect with your audience, when you're vulnerable and, when you're yourself. So it's perfect the way it
Yeah.
is.
But it's hard when I'm watching it
Yeah.
because when I'm watching it, I'm having a tough time. But then people reach out to me and say, when I watch you and I see, even if you are imperfect, it allows me to feel safe to try.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what we have to tell our kids too, right? The perfect is not possible without the practice.
Exactly.
It's not possible. We're never going to get there. And I mean, we can just hold ourselves back and say, I'm going to be perfect before I do this. And
Right.
how many people in the world are waiting to release something they probably already is perfect enough, but it's not enough for them?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just know that we come into this world with a burning desire, which is interesting. It's the first chapter of Think and Grow Rich. And that part of me that 100% knows I'm here to create an impact and to make a difference is unsatiable. Like it just won't settle down.
Yep.
So I can't sit back, even no matter what happens. There's a part of me that's just like this, like when can I play? What can I do? What's
Mhm.
next?
Yeah. That's yours. You want to serve. You want to be out there giving. You have so much knowledge to share and help others, right? I have a question for you. What would you say to your younger self about fear? Going back to your younger self.
I God, I love this question so much and I so appreciate it. I would say don't worry because later in life you're going to see you're a superstar.
Mm.
Like you're afraid now, but you're going to grow up to be something special. And just live into what you don't know it yet, but there's so much ahead that you're going to unfold and wait to like see the difference you're going to be able to make by
Mm.
trusting and believing in yourself.
That's beautiful. Yes. Yes, you will be a superstar. And also, I wanted to add is that fear is something, if we don't have it, we don't know we're growing, right? That itself shows me that I'm growing, doesn't it?
Right.
Because if
Right.
everything feels right all the time, then it's just another day.
Absolutely. One of the things that I use that supports me, because if I'm in fear, which used to immobilize me, it would literally buckle me at the knees. And it would take me hours and days sometimes to get over a thought.
Mhm.
And I realized you cannot choose to stand up and sit down at the same time. You've got to make a decision.
Yeah.
You're either standing or you're sitting. And if I'm afraid, then I'm not taking action and I'm not moving forward and I'm stuck. So I tell myself, make a decision. And are you going to continue to be scared or are you going to move forward? So that helps my brain shift with just make a choice. So when
Mhm.
I'm doing that, and because I can't have a positive and negative thought at the same time, sometimes the only thing I could do is turn to a mantra and I say it over and over and over and over again. That way my brain can't shift into a negative thought. So I'll continue saying the same thing in my head that's positive. And sometimes it's the serenity prayer. I'll say it until I finally shift out of the negative space.
Yeah. And catching yourself that you're going there is a training that we could teach our kids. Do you teach it to your children? Because you
My
do have two
kids are
beautiful kids.
mini masterminders. My son said to me the other day, he goes, "I think that person, if they change their paradigm, their experience will change." And I looked at him. I'm like, paradigm? Or my daughter said to my son, "Well, that sounds like a fixed mindset." And I'm like, I swear I love these kids so much because they're listening to everything that I'm doing at home and it's part of who they're being.
Yes. Yeah, they hear you. They're watching us. Yeah.
Yes.
Watching you. Yes, absolutely. Is there anything else you want to say about fear? Because this is a show about fear. So,
I think some of the fears and our old stories go hand in hand.
hmm,
So one of my because I do this work and I get inspired to ask my children questions, I said to my son, "What is a memory you have that is interesting for you?" He said, "Well, I remember thinking my mom is stupid because," he said, "I had chicken pox and you gave me penicillin and I knew I was allergic, so I didn't understand why you gave me penicillin." And I said, "Well, that's interesting because you've never had chicken pox. And I how you know you're allergic to something is you have it and then you have a reaction, now you know you're allergic." So I thought how interesting to have this conversation with him because this has been, and he was having such a hard time letting it go because he believed it so powerfully.
hmm,
He so like had grew up like really believing the story about how he had chickenpox and I gave him penicillin knowing he's allergic. So we got to unravel this story to how I said, he goes, "Well, what was the red bumps?" I said, "You had a fever that broke into a rash. And your rash you thought was chickenpox. And the doctor gave you penicillin and I, being the mom, gave it to you." And he said, "It's bothering me that you're trying to change my mind about how I remember my story."
hmm,
And it was so powerful for me because like this is only a child who at the time was 16 and I had this conversation. He's 17 now. And I thought, he's only had this a short time in his life and he's very attached to it. Imagine us, all the years we've been holding on to stories and believing them and creating how our life shows up for us based on the way we see things.
hmm,
And even have like I just was such a fearful child that I spent my entire life afraid to take action in case I didn't do it good enough.
yeah, yeah. Stories are so powerful. So, so thank you so much for sharing that. I love what you're doing and helping. You said the word was earlier was we're supposed to be, and then we don't end up being happy. We work all the way to we're supposed to have and want to be, right? Like this supposed life. and then we get there and then we feel empty.
Right.
And your program is all about figuring out, what do we do now?
Exactly. You know, doing hair, being part of so many people's lives for 25 plus years, I've seen a lot of people make hundreds of millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think once they get there, they're going to be happy. And they're less happy. Not all of them, not all of them. There's plenty of happy rich people. And the ones that are the ones that are giving back, who aren't afraid of losing it. The ones that have made it and they're sitting there afraid of losing it are literally less happy now than I knew 25 years ago, because they're so afraid, coveting what they've created, that they're not happy. They're constantly living in fear of what can be lost. And so it really is, it goes back to just live on vacation, enjoy your life, be responsible, love your life, love people, and live. You know, one of the sentences I love saying is like, don't wait to leave your legacy, live one.
Yes, absolutely. And why live when you're 60? Because you can't do half of the stuff.
Right.
Like everybody waits for this retirement, right? And I was like, well, I can't do other stuff that I would have done when I was 40.
Exactly. And the reality is there is a way to do it responsibly. You know, we don't have to live off of every last dollar. We don't have to live off of the like irresponsible way. Wow, those gardeners are really loud outside all of a sudden.
Yeah, they're
Like,
coming closer to you. But
I
thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. I'm going to put your link to your program and your website in our show note, so they will have access to that, and you will send me those things so we can put those in. So I'm just going to close off. Thank you so much for tuning into our show. Our show airs every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're interested in making learning easy for your child, please book a call, a Clarity coaching call with one of our certified learning success coaches at learningsuccessacademy.com. That's learningsuccessacademy.com. Until next time, see what's on the other side of fear, because fear is going to be always there. But as you know, we talked about today, we can overcome as long as we're aware and we can shift our stories. So thank you, and I'll see you next week.
thank you. Thank you.